Welcome back to another episode of Profusion. Today we've got Jerry Acuff here, Wall Street best-selling author, world-class sales trainer. I think on your website it says your top three sales trainer. Are you one yet? Two? Top 10? Top 20?
No. Well, it depends on which thing you look at. I was on a thing with the top 50 salespeople in their lifetime with Buffett and some of those people. And then the other one was there's actually a thing called globalgurus.org, and this is for everybody in the world. And I've been on that list for 9 years. And one year I was number 3. I've never been below 12, and there's only 30 people on. I'm the only one that does pharma. So I don't I don't put any stock in any of those things, because when I come home at night, my wife says, "Okay, pal, shut up and take out the garbage, because you ain't nobody here." So I don't get serious about myself. I get serious about our work, but not about whatever somebody wants to call me. A lot of people say, one of the best salespeople ever, and I don't believe that. But I'm happy that I got noticed. But also would say this, the first time that I got into the top global gurus, I was 65.
Okay. Perseverance is the key to success.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you've got 3 books. I read one of them. I read Start Thinking, Stop Acting Like a Seller, Start Thinking Like a Buyer. I've also written Relationship Edge, and I literally have New Model of Selling, but I haven't read it yet. Unfortunately, I buy books, but I don't always, I don't read them right away. I have like 25 books behind me that I haven't read. Jeremy Miner is like the new school salesman. You're like maybe the old school. So it might be a blend of new school versus old school, or new school and old school.
Well, what happened was I was on his podcast several years ago. And as soon as I hung up, he called me and he said, "Hey man," he said, I've never met anybody like you. He said, most people don't have this kind of perspective, and yours is just like mine. And so I said, well, why don't we get together and do something? So we met in Charlotte, spent 2 days together, and decided to write that book. And so we did it together. So, almost everything he said, and I said, and I think it's a really, really good book. He's a very interesting guy. I like the heck out of him. He's really smart. Yeah. And he's been very, very nice to me. But anyway, and I really enjoyed doing the book.
Tell us. Obviously, I'm sure there's some of the audience that don't know about you. You've been in the pharmaceutical coaching. You're a sales coach, a leadership coach for the last 50 years. You mentioned previously.
Well, I started as a rep in 1974 in Charlottesville, Virginia, and then I went to Birmingham to be the district manager. We had 55 districts, and I was a manager for 8 years. In the 8 years I was there, out of 50 managers, I was number 1 7 out of 8 years. I was really good at hiring. I hired 20 people in the 8 years I was there. One of them I fired after 3 weeks, and the other 19, all of them were in the top 50 within 2 years. 7 were the number 1 rep in the country, and 13 of those people got promoted. And then they moved me to the home office, and I woke up one day as vice president and general manager. And then after about 2 years, we merged with another company. They wanted me to move to Kansas City, which I thought was a bad idea. I said, I'll be out there slinging barbecue before I know it. And so I said, well, I'll be an entrepreneur. And candidly, Andrew, first 3 years I was an entrepreneur, I was not a good entrepreneur. I made enough money, but I did, when you get one of those jobs like that, you think you're smarter than you are. I'm just trying to be self-aware, but then that's when I really started reading, which I had been reading a lot. But then I started sort of shifting a lot of it to leadership and that stuff. But and then I started this company 25 years ago, I think in the next week or so, and we've done business with 20 of the top 100 companies in the world, and then we've written all these books. And a lot of things that happened to me that, coming from Memphis, Tennessee, with a family with, my mother's married 9 times. She was drunk for 30 years. My dad was, he was a nice guy, but he could be mean. And he was married 4 times. So, and nobody and most people in my family are just happy to have something to do. Me, I just decided, okay, I'm not going to be like them. My grandfather was my biggest, I guess he was my biggest person that I really valued. He was 6'7", and he was a college. He was an All-American basketball player in like 1915 or something like that.
Whoa.
And he would always take my brother and I to athletic events, and he loved athletics. And I actually lived with him and his wife, who was nutty as a fruitcake. I lived with them for a year. Then I lived with my dad for a year. And then I went to Cocoa Beach for a year. So I didn't have a hell of a lot of great, discipline. What I did have is great coaches. And one of the things that I've always loved about what I've did is to see myself as a coach. I coached in after I got out of school, but then I figured, okay, if I'm not going to get into college coaching, I better get a job. But I would not be who I am today if it weren't for the people that actually were my coaches. And I had several, but they were phenomenal. I mean, you see so many people. If you haven't read Ron Willingham's book, and he's got one chapter in this book. I got to remember the name of it, but if you only read the 5th chapter, he talks about the 3 dimensions of human performance, and it's basically your mindset is one, and that's not a huge one in terms of predicting success. The second one is emotional, and emotions are hard to sort of grasp. And then the last one is what he calls the content. It's basically everything that you think that you are. And then he draws a circle about that's bigger than a snowman. And he said, what most people are is what it's in that circle. What I'm trying to get you to be is somebody who's outside that circle, that has understand that there's more in your gas than you think you got. And I'll give you an example. I was number 1 manager, I guess 7 out of 8 years. The year is number 2. And I competed for a regional manager's job. And I was competing against a guy, God rest his soul, he died last year. And I worshiped the guy. And he was 10 years older than me. He got the job, I didn't, and I'd kicked his butt for 7 years. And so he calls me and he says, hey, I want, because now he's my boss. So he calls me, he said, hey, I'm going to have dinner with you tonight. And I said, well, you live in Tampa. He said, no, I'm flying up there to see you. I said, well, so meet me at the Jolly Ox in Vestavia at 7:00. I said, what time do you want us there? Your wife's not invited. This is you and me. I'm thinking, is this guy nuts? I'm the best guy he's got. So he comes there, and Andrew, this guy saved my life, changed my life in literally 2 minutes. So here's what he said to me. I'll never forget it. He said, Jerry, I came here to tell you 2 things. Number 1, you should have got this job, not me. You're far more qualified to do this than I am, but they didn't give it to you. They gave it to me, and I'm not going to take it back. But let me tell you something. This job is not big enough for you. I know you want to be a regional manager. That job's not big enough for you. He said, you need to be running our company. And I promise you, I will not stop advocating on your behalf until you're running the company. And I left there saying to myself, my gosh, I mean, my idea about being running a pharmaceutical company was it just didn't exist. But what I did learn from him is that I could do that. In 4.5 years, I was doing that. And so Willingham talks about that in his book. And I'm sorry, I can't remember it. I usually keep it right here next to me. But so if you read chapter 5, it'll show you we have to find ways to help people get better. And one of the things that I learned from all of that was Don Cutcliffe made me better. And he made me dramatically better by giving me an understanding of what I could actually do. And that's gone on to make me be successful as an entrepreneur and write books. None of that stuff happens if I don't have somebody telling me that I have more gas in the tank than even I am possibly able to comprehend. And we need people like that. We need to look for people like that.
Yeah. Who was the guy that came up to see you again? What was his name?
Don Cutcliffe, and he died.
That was great that he maybe he gave you a vision though, right? Maybe that was his.
Oh no, but I mean, he and I had been friends, because we were colleagues, and I kicked his butt every year. you know, but we always talked about books and stuff like that. But I mean, he knew that my goal in life was to be a regional manager. You know, regional manager, you got 150 people working for you, making 150 grand a year, and you go do that until you're 55 and retire. That's what I thought I was going to do. Mm-hmm. And then when he says, you know, you should be running this company, I started looking at the people that were in the home office, and I said, well, hell, I'm just as smart as these people are. And when I got promoted, the guy who promoted me was a guy named Jerry McMurtry, and he's dead. And he was terrific. He was a VP of sales and marketing. And he said to me, I was in Atlanta, and he said, hey, I'm going to take you to New Jersey, and I want you to go up there because I think you got a real shot to do something big. He said, but let me tell you something. There's nobody in the home office who thinks you'll make it except me. And I said, why? He said, because you're like a bull in a china shop. You tell people exactly what you think. He said, I happen to like that, but there's a lot of people who don't. So he said, and I get the sense that your real persona is different than what you portray when we go to these meetings. And I said, well, I hope it is. But I had a lot of people who were huge, had a huge impact on making me successful.
So if you had to summarize success in one word, what would it be?
Well, that's easy. It's not getting what you want. It's wanting what you get.
Okay. That's not one word, but
no, but I mean, to me, it's, you know,
want what you get. I like it. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, look, I'll tell you the happiest man I ever met in my life was my first wife's father. His name was Tom Brizendine. He worked in a factory. I did his income tax in 2001. He made $10,000, and he was the happiest person I ever met in my life. And I think about him. His name was Tom Brizendine. And after I divorced his daughter, I would pick him up and take him to Father's Day every year because, you know, my ex-wife was in New Jersey. But I loved him so much because he was so happy. He loved his garden. He loved his job. He loved his family. And I said to myself, you know, whatever you're going to do, I want to be like Tom. Tom Brizendine, and he died at 93. I went to his funeral. And so I think it's, you know, it's not wanting what you get, you know. I mean, it's whatever you get, you got to want it. But you can't always seek it. You know, I mean, I've been far more successful today than I was, you know, 25 years ago, but I'm not impressed by it. I'm doing what I believe I need to be doing. I believe, you know, I'm doing pretty good at it. I got a lot of people that work for me that are excited about what we're doing because we're not like everybody else. And I'm just happy as I could be. And if I were to get a liquidity event, I'd probably give a third of the money to the people that work there. Because nobody succeeds alone. I mean, it didn't take me long to figure that out. Mm-hmm. Nobody succeeds alone. And the other thing you have to do if you're a leader is to let people be their authentic self. Because far too often, my experience tells me that we want people to do things the way we do. And the very first person I hired, who, you know, he's in the hospital today, I worked with him. And I told him I made the call. And at the end of the first call, he says, I can't do that. I said, you can't do what? I can't make the call you just made. I said, why not? He said, it's not my style. I said, let me tell you something, pal. You ain't got a style. Mm-hmm. I'm here to give you style. Do you understand that? And literally, Andrew, I worked with him for three days in South Alabama, and he wouldn't make a call. He would not make a single call. And I'm saying, why did I hire this bozo? So I'm thinking, I got to fire this guy. Mm-hmm. So anyway, he kept telling me, and he said, well, what do you want me to do while you're gone? I said, well, look, we just launched this product. I was leading the country. We were selling $5,000 per rep. And I said, why don't you just go call to some of these hospitals and see if you can get it stocked? So he calls me the next Friday and he says, what do you want me to do with these orders? I said, what orders are you talking about, John? He said, well, you told me to get these orders. Now, my barometer is $5,000. And I said, well, how much is it? He said, $26,000. And my response was, I like your style. But you see, what he did, and I'll never forget him for this. He taught me that these people don't want me to teach them to be me. They want me to help them become their best them. And so John taught me that in 1981. First time, the second week I actually worked with him, and he became the number one rep in the country. He took my place when I left, but I learned so much from him and the other people that I worked with. And so I think you just got to be happy with what you got.
Yeah, that's great coaching suggestion right there. Don't force them to be like you. Just kind of like help guide them on their journey, on their path. But
I think a lot of it is you have to try and understand, who are they?
Right.
Because they're not all the same. But I do think that this is why, as a leader, I lean so much on Willingham's stuff on, the 3 dimensions of human performance. Because when somebody's not performing, and we have this in any business that I've ever been in, I usually confront them and say, look, I said, you and I need to have a conversation. And they're gonna say, why? And I said, because I can't understand why you have all of this potential, and for some reason you're not willing to use it. I said, let me make this really clear to you. There's greatness in you, but that greatness will never come out until you believe it and that you try to exhibit it. And so what I would like for you to do is go back and think about, how do you approach things? And then I want you to come back and tell me, what are you going to do to actually get to your potential? Because you are not close to your potential. Now, what I usually do is I usually use my hands. I said, okay, this is your potential. This is your performance. This is your potential. And I want you to tell me, why do you have this gap? Because I can't understand it. So what I try and do is to put the onus on them, not on me. Because truthfully, it is on them, not me.
Yeah. And how does that work for you? How does that?
You only get 2 results. They quit within 6 weeks, or they start working their butts off.
Yeah. So we spoke before the podcast. You said you read 650 books in the last 45 years. What would you say are like your top, if you can even do that, because I'm a big reader too. What are your top few that you'd recommend that are maybe not mainstream, like, Covey and kind of those kind of books? You know what I mean? Like kind of a little bit more obscure books. This is more for the more avid reader, I guess, instead of the not avid reader.
Yeah, that's a pretty good question. I mean, I told you, I'm really a huge fan of The Power of Consistency by Weldon Long. And if somebody asked me, is there one book, I would say read that book. Now, I've read
the Willingham book too, but we can't figure out the name of it yet. Right?
What is it?
The Willingham book. We can't figure out the name of it though, right?
Yeah, I can get it to you in a couple of minutes here. But anyway, I think the other one is, what's the other one I was thinking about? The one that I've read 92 times. Was Maxwell Maltz, Psycho-Cybernetics.
Right.
I read that 90 times. Now, what I would say to you is that I would not do that again. I would read Weldon's book, because his book is fundamentally very, very similar, but it's far easier to understand. You can go on YouTube and find Maltz, in a classroom talking.
Right.
But I'm a big fan of Weldon. Weldon's a great guy. He's a very nice man, and he's in prison, and he's made himself hugely successful. Let me think of what I'm trying to think of. What I like. The Coaching Conversation is a great book. I don't know how many people know anything about it, but it's actually a really good book. And when I ever talk to leaders, I say this is a really good one, because he teaches you, what are the ways that you actually can get into a conversation that cause people to want to get better. And let's see, what else would I think of? I have to look over here at my book thing here. let's see. I don't know. I like the book The Try. Now I'm selfish because they're one of those chapters is about me, and I didn't. It's called The Try, and the reason I liked it is when I was running the pharmaceutical company, we had a diabetes product, and a woman who I did not know from California sent me a letter and asked me if we would sponsor her. I had no idea who she was. So I looked her up on and found out that she was a blind downhill snow skier. And she'd been winning all this other thing. So I said, well, and she had diabetes. And her name was Claudia Berkner. And anyway, so I said, I got to meet this woman. And so I called her and I said, look, I want to bring you to New Jersey and you can sit here for a couple of days and we'll talk to you. And you can meet with our team. And if you like us, and then I think we can do something. And so as it turns out, she and I became really close. She didn't have any family. I bought her a van because she had no way to get around. So she had to get people to drive or something. I just bought her a van and I paid for that. My wife and I did. And then I'd go see her twice a year. And then she'd come to our house. And she was one of the most incredible people I ever met in my life. She died at the age of 39. But one of those chapters in that book, I think her name in that book is Julia Anderson. Her story is in there and it's way compelling. Mine is not so compelling, but hers is.
Who wrote it?
I know somebody wrote it. It was written in Texas. I'll send you the information after we get on here. I mean, I got it right up here. It's called The Try, and you can buy it on Amazon. I mean, I buy a lot of books on Amazon. I bought 50. The other day I called my secretary. I said, look, I had to buy 4 books today. And I said, do we have any books? She said, yeah, I just ordered 150. That was the stock.
Yours or other people's? Or
pardon?
Whose books were you ordering?
I was ordering mine.
Okay.
I mean, it's $15. I said, if I'm going to give these things, I give away a lot of them. If people want one, I'm happy to sign it. And people find that to be helpful. But I mean, I'm not making a boatload on books. Period. Yeah. So
what do you make per book? Like I'm attempting to write a book, what do you make a book? Like $1, $2, $5?
You don't get much money because it depends on who publishes it. And I did the John Wiley thing the first time. I was stupid. I wanted a hardcover, which is not. You don't need a hard cover. You can have a soft cover. And I just signed whatever they put in front of me. I think I didn't get my international rights because my book is in like 13 different languages. And I mean, I can't read the damn things, but I don't know. I don't think I've ever made much more than a couple of $1,000 a year on books. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, it's far better to find somebody. I mean, the last book, Jeremy and I, the book that we wrote, we actually had somebody help us write, ghostwriter, and ghostwriters worth their worth in gold.
Right.
I think I never wrote a book so that I'd make money. What I wanted to write a book for is would help me make more money with clients, because people think that if you're an author that you're really smart. They don't know that you're particularly not any gigantic intellect, but people want the books. I mean, I was at a meeting a couple of weeks ago and everybody had to get a book, and most of the times they want me to stay around and sign the things, which I don't mind doing that. The book is a really, really good thing to have if you want to continue to promote yourself.
Yeah, it's like a tool in your tool belt, right? So what?
And then you get somebody like me who endorse your book. And, then people who know me, I mean, I don't know. I'm still I think I got like 20,000 followers on LinkedIn. And so I'm a public figure, which is,
right.
To me, it's a joke. I mean, a public figure, what am I going to do? Go out here and get arrested for something stupid? I mean, I don't know why they do that, I would highly suggest that you write a book.
Yeah. Who did you have ghostwrite it? Do you remember?
No, but it's not. Jeremy and I can tell you who it is. She was in Miami, and she was really good.
Yeah.
Now I will have to be honest and say she was far more slanted towards the kinds of things that an old man like me would not remember or know. So I had to learn some of the stuff that was actually in the book. Jeremy knew everything, and she knew everything. I mean, because she makes references to things that ordinary people that buy books today would actually, learn. And but she was really good.
Yeah.
Now we had somebody before that, and we fired them, and then we got her.
Mm-hmm. So you're number 3 sales trainer in the world, 5, 10, 12. Who's number 1? Is it like Tony Robbins or?
I think it's Grant Cardone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't know. It changes every year. When I just look at it at the end of the year, I mean, I never sent them any information about the book that Jeremy and I wrote, which was a Wall Street Journal bestseller. I thought it would, keep me in the top 10. I dropped to number 12, but who cares what I am? My clients, Now I will tell you, one of the things that I've learned in the last 7 months is that as much high profile as I am with my clients, I am not with people that are not my clients. So, for example, we may do business with 50 or 60 or 70 companies. There's 20,000 pharma companies. And how many of those people know me? The answer is probably not many. And then if you look at medical devices, which we do business with medical devices, there's 100,000 of those. And those people don't know me. And so what I've decided is if you want your ship to come in, send one out. And I had not been sending out enough marketing material so that people would want to be interested in what we do. And I've got a really great company that I'm working with that has completely transformed my bias, not altering anything that we're currently doing, but adding a whole part of our website that ultimately has bots, gives people an opportunity to work on objections. The bots actually can take a person who's interested in my virtual training, whether it's, how to set and achieve goals, or how do you become a superstar salesperson, or how do you build relationships with people that are difficult. They can take any of those, courses, and they can sell it without talking to a human being.
Like AI.
Yeah. And this also includes AI. And
Yeah.
the AI part for us is basically just a time saver, because, they've got everything that we've done in the last 15 years in their AI bucket, whatever the heck it is. And they can turn around, a workshop or a speech in probably 2 hours. We would probably spend 3 or 4 days on it. Now, I wouldn't spend 3 or 4 days, because if I'm speaking, I know exactly what I'm going to say. But, I've got employees that are spending 3, 4, 5 days creating a workshop, or 5 days, or correcting something, or getting in touch with, the med reg people, etc. So we're removing all of that on the one side of Delta Point. The other side is we're still going to be doing what we do, which is consulting. But what our people will be doing is taking what the AI tells us, and then we can go and customize it for the client, because the client wants to know, how do I sell this product? And it's not, and so that's, so we have to actually learn the product. We have to read the package insert. We have to make sure that everything we're saying they can say, because they're responsible for what their people say to people. So it's more rigorous, but it's also what they want.
I know Jeremy's into like key lines and tonality. Do you have anything like that you go to sales line, or is it just really digging into how to help the buyer?
Yeah, man, look at Jeremy, and I will say Jeremy taught me about tonality. Mm-hmm. And I'm really impressed with what he does with tonality. And we now use that.
Right.
Probably not to the degree that he does because he's a genius at it.
Right.
But we spend most of our time. I mean, if you ask the vast majority of companies that we work with, do you have a definition of selling? The answer will be 98% of the time, no. And I'm saying to myself, I'm not the smartest guy in town, but I know that I would like, if I'm running a sales force and I've got 100 people, 50 people, 20 people, whatever, I want them all to be on the same page.
Right.
Well, you can't be on the same page if you got 500 people and you got, no definition of selling. Now, as I told you earlier, I think Fred Herman said selling is two things. Selling is teaching. Well, that's not hard. Our job is to teach. Now, that doesn't mean preach. That's a completely different issue. You have to be really good at asking questions and trying to understand the customer. In pharma, oftentimes the customer won't give us the time because we sound like everybody else. And so part of what we have to do is to say, okay, well, how can I actually get you to want to listen to me? And that basically it takes in tonality, but it also takes in what are the words that you use that differentiate you from everybody else. And so, to me, that is really important. The second thing is selling, Herman said, is find out what people want and helping them get it. Now, he said, most people don't know what they want. And I sit here and think about, I had a home in Flagstaff, Arizona one time, several years ago, and it's probably 15 years ago, and I walked into Staples, and some 21-year-old kid says this question, are you looking for anything in particular? Now, I got to tell you, I'll be 76 on Sunday. He's the only person that's ever said that to me in any retail store. And I said, yeah, I'm looking for a printer. He said, well, you want me to show you? And I said, sure. So he takes me over there. And he says, okay, there's 6 of them here. And I said, well, what's the difference? He said, well, these 3 are for printing. If you want to print photos or something, these 3 are for actually printing documents. And then he starts to walk away, Andrew. And I said, whoa, man, get back here.
Yeah.
And I said, he said, yeah. I said, well, it's clear you know something about these. If you were me, which one would you get? I'd get the one in the middle. I said, well, okay, why would you get that one? He said, because you clearly don't know a damn thing about printers. That one's the easiest one to put through. I mean, to get started. And I get off at 7 o'clock tonight. It was like 5. He said, and if you haven't gotten it done by then, I'm going to call you. And if you're not, I'll be at your house and I'll fix it. And then he asked me this question. Now, again, no one's ever asked me this question. Is your house 1 story or 2? And I said, I'm thinking this guy's going to rob me or something. He said, yeah. I said, why? And he said, well, do you think you'd ever want to be upstairs in the kitchen and the printer's downstairs, but you don't want to walk downstairs?
Yeah.
So anyway, I said, yeah. He said, well, you need a router. And he said, do you know what a router is? I said, no, I don't. If I don't know what it is, I know. He said, well, I said, well, put it in the cart. He said, yeah, do you have cables for the router? I said, look, man, if I don't know what a router is, I damn sure don't have cables. So put that. So I went from $150, thing to about $250, maybe $300. But I go back, and this is what I try and get people to understand. When I walked into that store, I believed that I wanted a printer.
Yeah.
What he taught me is that I wanted a printer that I could use anywhere in my home. And what salespeople are supposed to do is exactly what that 21-year-old kid at Northern Arizona University had been taught by somebody. You need to find out what these people really want.
Or maybe he's just interested, right? I walk into all these stores and they're like, I'm like, where is this and that? And they just tell me where it is.
Yeah.
Right? They just tell you. I'm like, do I tell them to show me? Yeah. Or do I just go and try and figure this out myself? And that's like my $1 million question every time. Yeah. And I love the ones that go and show me, right? I'm like, okay, this person gets it, So that guy, maybe it's just genetic. I don't know.
I don't know. But I mean, the good news is, I've done a lot of speaking at colleges because, I went to Northern Illinois University, I think 17 times. I probably went 34 times because I went for 17 years. And they asked me if I would go, and the professor called me and asked me, he said, we were using your book. And I said, well, he said, and I'm teaching. I said, do you want me to teach it? He said, how much would you cost? I said, it wouldn't cost anything. I'd pay for it myself. I said, and I'll give the students the books. How many books people you got? He said 60. I said, all right, I'll send you 60 books and then I'll come up here and do the. And so I did that for 17 years. I missed one time because there was snow. But I mean, it's not hard to find somebody who's willing to help people be successful. And what I've learned is that nobody succeeds alone. I have about 30 people in my life that I have to pay homage to at some point in time, because I would be not what I am today if it weren't for them. And it started with my 7th grade coach, who told me when I walked into the store, and by the way, I've been arrested for shoplifting when I was 12, smoking, drinking. And I walk into class at Sherwood Junior High in Memphis, and he says, "Boy, you need to go out and play football. I expect you in the football field today at 4:00. You got that?" Well, I was scared to death. I had to call my mother and say, "You got to buy me some cleats." Of course, she brings me high tops, which I didn't really want. But that guy changed my life in a million ways.
All right. Any last final thoughts here we got?
I don't know. I think success is really a factor of just how much do you want to learn about whatever you're trying to do. I mean, if I learned anything, from reading all these books, I've learned that, I'm far, far, far more educated than I was when I thought it was. I think the other thing too is to be really mindful of building relationships with people, even if they're not easy to do. And that's why I wrote the book. There's a whole chapter in there about how do you actually get people to want to talk to you. I mean, Carol Dweck is.
Yeah.
So I wanted, she wrote a really good book. And I read the book and I wanted to talk to her. So I called. I thought, well, heck, I'll just call her, tell her who I am. Well,
you got a hold of her?
No. Well, no, what I wanted to tell her was I thought she actually learned something that the guy at Arizona State, and he's the guru in how do you use language. And he's a very nice man, but I thought she discovered something that he had missed or didn't know or whatever. So I called her office and they said, look, you got to send her an email because she'll tell you whether she wants to talk to you or not. So I sent her an email and I just said, look, I know that the professor over at Arizona State, I think he's a brilliant guy. I said, but I think he may have missed something or not thought of something that you did. And I was really impressed with that. And I said, if you'd like to talk about it, let me know. Now, do you think she could talk to me? Yes, of course she did. But when I mentioned the fact that, the other guy's the guru and that she left something out, and I was serious. She really was. And we had a 25, 30-minute talk. But my point is, for example, if I'm trying to meet somebody, like I wanted to meet Herb Sendek. Herb is the basketball coach he was at Arizona State. And I want to meet him because I love college basketball. And I was in the middle of nowhere, in my mind, Scottsdale. And so I asked 10 people this question: how well do you know Herb Sendek, if at all? 9 people said they don't. The 10th one said, I know him really well. Now, what's the next question? How comfortable would you be to introduce me? He said, now, I can tell you that there's a lot more times where people say I'm not comfortable because he's weird or whatever. So he said, you want to go to breakfast with him next Thursday? So I do. So I go meet with him. Now, he's the 4th youngest person in college history to 400 victories. And he's an introvert in many ways. And he was a valedictorian at Carnegie Mellon. So I go to meet him for breakfast and we talk, and he knows the coach that I have a really good friend with. And so at the end of it, he said, what do you want from me? I said, Coach, I don't want anything from you. I said, first place, I have plenty of money. I can buy my own tickets. Secondly, I think your T-shirts are ugly, so I have no interest in your T-shirts. I said, but let me ask you this question. I said, how many of these people in that locker room do you have that, he said 15. I said, how many of those will not have to get a job because they'll be able to make their living out of basketball? He said, none of them. I said, well, here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to talk to them all for an hour tomorrow and show them how they can actually become far more successful by learning how do you build relationships with people that you don't know. Because you know where those people are? They're in the stands and your boxes and you watch these kids go right by to see mom or dad or whatever, when they ought to be over there and trying to meet somebody who's got a big company. And so I did our thing. Their very best player called me that night and said, "Can I meet you tomorrow?" And he and I have been friends for probably 25 years. And he transferred from Arizona State to Marquette. And then the Marquette coach, I've been his mentor for 17 years. Well, he's not at Marquette now. In fact, he just took the job at Maryland. But that's my hobby, is working with coaches like that.
Yeah. I help coach 9-year-old baseball kids, so maybe that'll lead to something.
It will. I just think, look, we have to be ourselves. We can't take ourselves too seriously. We got to enjoy the success that we have, whatever it is. And we got to be happy with what we get.
Yeah.
If we do that, we'll have a hell of a life.
Yeah. Appreciate what you've got rather than what you don't got.
Yeah, what you want to get.
All right. Look up Jerry Acuff. You Google this guy. He's everywhere. He's got three books on Amazon. I imagine you offer private coaching if you want. So it looks like you've got a bunch of offerings on your website, jerryacuff.com. Anything else I missed there?
No, I just appreciate you having me on, Andrew. I really do. And I'll send you the name of that book as soon as we get off the
yeah, absolutely. The one thing I love about, speaking with older people, they just have more wisdom. They're more patient. They're slower. And that's what that's a takeaway that I've learned over the years is working with or being mentored by older people instead of younger, But it's funny. My father always said, if you're old, get a young accountant. And if you're young, get an old accountant. I don't know why he said that, but maybe it's just the opposites kind of attract sort of capacity.
Sound like a wise man to me, Andrew.
He's 77 as well. So.
Is he?
Yep.
Well, tell him if he ever goes down to Cocoa Beach or if he comes to Lexington, Virginia, which is not the end of the world, but you can see it from here. Yeah. And it's where VMI is, and Washington Lee is in there too. They got a great school. So, but I love living here, and I've been here because I had all these responsibilities at VMI, and I love where I went, and I would be nothing without them and my roommates at VMI. Yeah. So,
all right, Jerry.
Thanks for having me, Andrew.
Thanks for coming on. Thanks a lot.
All right, man. Thank you.